This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya, from the Fort Hall School of Government. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at some of the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 4th of February 2021, and I am 2M.
I am CS.
And I am GK. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, Sonko staring at long prison term. In the Standard, inside state's plan to tame politicians. And in the Star, Sonko locked up in committee to face terror charges. Let us begin with our former governor, crying man. It seems that the chickens have come home to roost for former Governor Mike Sonko, where yesterday the government prepared terror charges against him, and we have seen that they have put in an application to have him detained for 30 days as they carry out investigations over his alleged involvement in, get this, terrorist activities. I haven't heard that in a while. And so according to the Chief Inspector of Anti-Terrorism Police Unit, Newton Demangu, he says that Sonko, did I say the name wrong?
No, continue.
Sonko is recruiting a militia group to disrupt the peace and stability of the nation, leading to anarchy which can escalate to civil disobedience of law and order to the detriment of peace-loving Kenyans. So Sonko has become a threat to our national security in this way.
Absolutely.
And he also has 12 assault charges. And
you know, when you see the ATPU boss, what did you call him? The Mango? And he says he's got intel that that Sonko is planning this kind of attacks by recruiting these men. Then you get shocked. And we have been saying, and GK, you said this last week. When you see people fighting in churches, when you see this ATPU man saying this, and this is just February 2021. Imagine what will happen by December 2021.
Exactly.
And let's take stock from 2013 until now. Over $50 billion US has been put in this country in terms of investment. Just some months ago, the president went to France, and he was able to secure a 1.5 billion euro deal to build a road all the way from Rironi to Mau Summit, to Narok Mau Summit. All right. Now, you don't get that kind of deal if you cannot guarantee peace and security
and stability.
Now, what it says, the long and short of this is this: it tells you President Uhuru Kenyatta is not going to stop and is not going to wait and watch these fellows trying to run down country where they can be stopped now. And if it means locking up Sonko for 90 years, well and good. And that's what the state is actually, the nation is actually trying to tell us. It's telling us that Sonko staring at a long prison term. If it means getting and stopping these hustler fellows, these hoodlums who get extractions and money from Karen, from going on with their narrative, then lock them up.
And it's more than a narrative. If there's actual destruction going on. It reminds me of Putin's legal squeeze, the Russian president. And what he does is he systematically, if you have broken the law, he will not spare you, right? So for his friends, everything, but to his enemies, the full extent of the law.
And the thing is, we have to take this very seriously, because all around the world, we're seeing that in major cities, a great threat to internal security is homegrown terror. And especially when you have it with someone so influential. I mean, we're talking about former governor of a capital city. And furthermore, we have to remember that this man has a history. If I may remind you, this man was impeached, right? And whereas some people would like us to think that he was impeached because he was dancing party after party, he was actually impeached for gross violations of the Constitution, of the County Government Act, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, Public Finance Management Act. This man diverted 297 million Kenyan shillings from roads and bursaries, pesa ya watoto. And we saw what was in yesterday's headlines. And he's diverting funds. And this man also paid for his daughter to attend a First Ladies Conference in New York with taxpayers' money. He caused Nairobi's debt to balloon by over 20 billion by the end of December 2019. And he refused to disperse money to the county, even when it was approved by the county assembly. Thus going against the will of the very people who elected him, because MCAs represent the citizens of Nairobi. And,
Thank you,
we have
CS,
to take
for
it
that.
seriously.
Of course. And then he made so many enemies during his tenure that the enemy of your enemy becomes your friend. So when you were demolishing houses, when you were deciding to go rogue with your Sonko rescue teams, people have come back and seen an avenue to pay back.
Oh, absolutely. You do not Tusi, rise, and you expect no consequences. And that goes, by the way, to anybody of these taka fellows. You abuse a president, you will receive the same medicine.
I think that reminds me of something that I heard recently, that people should not confuse proximity to power with having power.
Hey, amen to that. So we have a 3-part criteria that we will use to break down the headlines. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I love the star because the terror charges is quite new and topical.
Absolutely.
And I think we should do the standard very quickly.
Yeah, so the standard is talking to us about rising political temperatures. The headline is Inside State's Plan to Tame Politicians. And it's focusing on recent events that we've witnessed. I think everyone is now aware of what happened at the burial of Deputy Governor Joash Maangi's father, where 2 sitting members of parliament went toe-to-toe, throwing blows at each other. And then there was a stoning of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's motorcade in Githurai. And in many rallies, we've been seeing rising political temperatures. But I think a very important issue that the article brings to our attention is a comment that was made by the National Security Committee of Parliament. And what they said is that it is time that the law catches up with those who are also inciting people along class lines.
Fantastic.
And it's something that is going under the radar, and we need to pay more attention to.
I like that. So guys, who do we give our winning headline?
Before we even say that, CS, there's something you said earlier, and I want to reiterate and just remind you a bit. This even did not start in Kisii and Githurai. This fellow started burning cars somewhere in Rift Valley, all right? And that, if that goes unabated, you can imagine again what will happen
by
in the
their
next couple
own
of months.
admission at a public rally.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
was incitement.
Yes.
So who do we give our winning headline, guys?
That's good. The Star.
We give it to the Star?
Yes.
CS, do you agree or do you want the Standard?
I think I'm quite passionate about what the Standard is bringing to the fore.
I'm with you on the Standard. There you have it. Gives us our winning headline. The Standard gives us our winning headline.
Get a lollipop.
On to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Ndula, you have a drawing, the Daily Nation, of a coffin. And the coffin has been caricatured as a boxing ring. And the caption there is political intolerance, microphone snatching, podium storming, fight action, venue, next funeral. And I think this is regard to the fight instigated by William Ruto's people.
And we have a funeral coming up. Nyachai's funeral is coming up.
Yes.
Will Matiang'i let such a situation arise?
I'd like them to leave it like that so that we see who the real troublemakers
are. I think Matiang'i runs a tight ship. He's not ready for Kisii to show themselves in this way.
Yeah, I found this incident quite unfortunate. I mean, at a funeral of a father of a deputy governor, where former Prime Minister, an African head of state, an African statesman, and a sitting deputy president were present. You had a sitting member of parliament run to the podium and confront another sitting member of parliament with blows.
Yes.
I mean...
well, the one who was running to the stage, his boss was seated right there.
Apparently in defense of him.
With state security, police who actually meant to maintain law. Meaning is one who instigated it, correct?
Yes? No, not saying yes. I really like this commentary from Ndula.
Yeah.
Let's move to the Standard.
You have the growing rift between Uhuru Kenyatta, caricature Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga on one side, and William Ruto standing on the other side of the rift.
This one seems old and boring.
Yeah, I think Gado is on leave. That one I think we just...
And actually, as much as it's showing fault lines, it's fallen shy of attributing fault.
Yes.
And I think that fault should be attributed to the person who's pocketing that cartoon.
Excellent. I love it.
Can we toss the Standard though?
Yeah.
Please.
Absolutely. Last but not least, you have the Star, and that's Ozone, and a caricature of UNCTAD boss,
Yeah.
just former UNCTAD boss, that's Bukisa Kitui, and he's thrown his hat in the ring, the Kitui 2022, and removed his UNCTAD hat. I mean, I just wish the Luya nation could just come together and choose one amongst them.
They need to have a board meeting before the next election and, unite.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, great choice. I'd rather have him than the fellows at current who make Kenya look like Afghanistan in just 5 years.
Yeah, I'm a little biased. He was my former MP, so.
Kimilili. Yeah, but I'm sure he knows running for president is not the same thing as MP for Kimilili, yeah?
Between the Daily Nation, I think the Star, who do we give?
Daily Nation. Daily Nation.
The political intolerance,
yes,
or the throwing the hat in the
Daily
ring?
Nation.
There you have it. Daily Nation gives us our winning country. And now for our final thought. But before we get there, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to hit like.
And now our final thought, it is inspired by a speech known as the Peace Speech by John F. Kennedy.
Nice. So this week we've been looking at global goals and how we have moved towards achieving them. Yesterday we looked at Mohammed Yunus and his quest to increase access to credit and finance for the poor through Grameen Bank. And today we look at JFK's famous commencement speech and his quest for world peace. So on June 10th, 1963, at the American University, President Kennedy gave a very important speech in global history. So here's some context. The speech was given in the shadow of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the world was dangerously close to nuclear war. President Kennedy decided that he needed to do something as a leader of the United States and as a human being to bring the world back from the abyss. And the approach that he took was to try to negotiate a nuclear test ban treaty with the Soviet Union. So in late May, Kennedy asked his speechwriter to do two things: lay out his vision of how the United States could live in peace with its major adversary, and reinvigorate the failing 8-year effort to negotiate a nuclear test ban treaty. The Pentagon and the State Department were kept in the dark about the speech's content until the last moment, and this was in case they tried to scuttle it. So the speech also contained one new substantive proposal. It was a unilateral offer to the Soviets. And he says, I now declare that the United States does not propose to conduct nuclear tests in the atmosphere so long as other states do not do so. We will not be the first to resume. So Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev heard the speech, and he said that this was the finest speech by an American president since Roosevelt. And they signed a treaty a few weeks later. So you find that the Soviet negotiators reached a deal with the US to set up a hotline between Washington and Moscow. And a month later, July 25th, the US and the Soviets and the United Kingdom agreed to the Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which barred nuclear testing in the atmosphere, underwater, or in outer space. The foreign ministers of all these three countries formally signed this in August 5th, 1963. The speech is called the most important speech of all time because it is a demonstration of statecraft in its finest, and in the most important way. And because he saw that they needed an active approach to break through the nuclear issue. And it's a brilliant speech because it calls upon Americans to rethink their own ideas and principles. The speech is wonderful. It has this wonderful paragraph, which for me is beautiful and eloquent and a statement about the global society at that time. Kennedy says, "Let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct our attention to our common interests and to the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot end our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity." I found that to be really beautiful. What did you guys like?
Hey, Chaka.
I think that it reminded me of our situation back home, especially when he's talking about bringing people together. And there's an extract which I think applies quite well back home, picking up from where you left off. And he's talking about many nations coming together. And as we know, Kenya is one nation, but with many ethnic communities, which are also considered nations in themselves. And he says that there will still be quarrels and conflicting interests as there are within families and nations, and that community peace does not require that each man love his neighbor. It requires that they live together in mutual tolerance, submitting their disputes to a just and peaceful settlement. And so I think it's something to reflect about. Back home.
And what I liked as well was the lessons that I think we can learn as people push for BBI, right? That you can attain this big goal. Kennedy was here looking for peace, but saying that your goal need not be impracticable. If you define your goal clearly, make it manageable and less remote. So there's a part in the speech where he says we can help all to see it, draw hope from it, and to move irresistibly towards it. So if the proponents of BBI can say that the ideal is peace, how do we get everybody to see that and be, not resist it, I guess?
I mean, it's funny when you think about when Khrushchev told Roosevelt, told Kennedy, that's the best speech he's ever read since Roosevelt. I think that was just a way of de-escalating, which was very, very clever. Now, I read the last part of the speech and dedicated to our own very own William Ruto. And Kennedy tells us that when a man's ways please the Lord, the scriptures tell us, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. And it's not peace. And it's not just peace. In the last analysis, it's basically a matter of human rights. It is the right to live out our lives without fear of devastation, the right to breathe air as nature provided it, the right to future generations to a healthy existence. While we proceed to safeguard our national interests, let us also safeguard human interests. And the elimination of war is clearly in the interest of both. No treaty, however much it may be to the advantage of all, however tightly it may be worded, can provide absolute security against the risks of deception and evasion. But it can if it is sufficiently effective in its enforcement, and if it is sufficiently in the interests of the signers, offer far more security and far fewer risks, unabated, uncontrolled, unpredictable arms race. What are we saying here? Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto came together in 2012 and did a handshake. The handshake signaled a peace treaty between Kikuyus and Kalenjin. That was a peace treaty. Uhuru Kenyatta 6 years later came together with Raila Odinga and did another handshake, a second treaty. This treaty was to unite the 55% of country that supported Uhuru and the 44% of country that supported Raila Odinga. However, William Ruto seems to have forgotten the first peace treaty. He seems to be undoing it and reintroducing a more lethal dynamic than ethnic tension, and it is based on class. The hustler's narrative, a narrative designed to drive a wedge between the haves and the have-nots, is by no measure a war between America and the Soviets. There's no clear threat here. However, the hustler narrative is one that seeks to invoke the fear of total devastation, as Kennedy said. A fear that when time comes, we will come for you and everything that you own. A fear that we are poor because you are rich. It may all look peaceful now, but when push comes to shove, this country will not know what hit it. Kennedy and Khrushchev nearly annihilated the entire world in just a matter of hours. They knew if they both hit the nuclear codes, the world as we know it would be no more. In the end, sense prevailed. Will Ruto see sense in climbing down from his pleb-driven narrative? He better.
Oh, strong words there for the deputy president.
Reminds me of the concept of mutually assured destruction. And I like the fact that you really brought it back home. And in thinking about this speech, it really made me reflect on how growing up I'd listened to speeches from a lot of world leaders, and I'd wonder whether we would have that quality of leadership back home. So as I listened and read this speech, I held it against our own leaders, and it reminded me of a speech that was made recently. But first I'll quote from JFK's speech, and then I'll tell you which speech it reminded me of. He said, "Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Man's reason and spirit have often resolved the seemingly unsolvable, and we believe they can do it again." And what we should focus on is not a sudden revolution in human nature, but on a gradual evolution in human institutions, on a series of concrete actions and effective agreements which are in the interest of all concerned.
Yeah.
There is no single simple key, no grand or magic formula to be adopted. It must instead be the sum of many acts. And this reminded me of our president's speech on the 12th of December last year, the Jamhuri Day speech. And what the president highlighted, and I see parallels here, is that our founding fathers, and interestingly, as the president spoke about our founding fathers, JFK gave this speech in 1963, just around the time we were becoming a republic and gaining independence. And so our president said, our founding fathers taught us that our nation is not a finished work. It will always be a work in progress. And our nationhood is not a static idea frozen in time. It is an evolving project. The making of our nation is not a destination, it is a journey. And so when I hold the president's speech against this litmus test that JFK gave us, there were two key things he gave us as test. He talked about concrete action and effective agreements. And so what did our president tell us? I think in terms of concrete actions, we can think about the Big Four agenda. And when we look at the intentions of the Big Four agenda, therefore, number one is liberating our people from the poverty of dignity caused by inadequate services. Number two is transitioning our people, especially the youth, from being earners of wages to owners of capital. The third is jumpstarting the shift from being a country of net consumption to one of net production. And the fourth is building a holistic base of human capital that is food secure and health assured. Now, those are intentions. So what are the concrete actions? In terms of poverty of dignity caused by inadequate services. Last year, the president visited Mukuru kwa Ruben, and he visited a private health facility that was attending to 500,000 people. And so what did the president do? He was quite sad at the state of affairs. And so he ordered the Nairobi Metropolitan Services to build 24 level 2 and 3 hospitals. And he's going to be opening them in the next few weeks. Quick turnaround. Concrete action. Number two, on creating a robust population of owners of capital, without going into a lot of the economics, his policies have resulted in, through the lowering of CBK rate and the lowering of cash reserve ratios in banks, available liquidity to the tune of 35 billion. And further to that, a credit guarantee scheme for small and medium-sized enterprises to the tune of 100 billion shillings. Again, concrete actions.
I like that, CS. I will have to cut you short on account of time.
Excellent, though. Fantastic, fantastic.
I will, and we could have a whole other show on, Big Four intentions and concrete actions. Sorry about that. So on a day where we had winning cartoon from the Daily Nation, winning headline from the Standard, I want to leave you with this. There's a quote that JFK says, "There are few earthly things more beautiful than a university. A university is a place where those who hate ignorance may strive to know, where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see." So may we always make others see. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pang Free to Air, and Star Times.
God bless.